So the beauty of pattern carving is it's quick, it's decorative, and it's really versatile. And you can use these techniques to decorate furniture, wood turnings, or simply to make decorative panels. And that's what we're going to do now. So now all we need is a design. And I was lucky enough recently to travel to Australia, which gave me a great idea for a project. Now once you leave the beautiful cities, drag yourself away from the vast coastlines, you can get yourself lost in the Australian bush. And this is where you'll find plenty of local wildlife, some cute and some, well, some's a bit scary. So for this project we're going to focus on my cute little mate. He's a koala that we call Dennis. I'm not sure why, but Dennis he is.
Hello.
So now for an actual design. Now, the internet is full of ideas, and if you head to carvingbynumbers.com and then follow the link to our Pinterest boards, you'll find some nice ideas to get your creativity flowing, especially if you look in the pattern and design ideas section. So here is the design that I came up with for Dennis. The key to any pattern design is to find line drawings that you can adapt. All of that is going to become a little bit clearer as we progress. So next we're on to the carving tools. You don't need a massive selection of carving tools for pattern carving. If you haven't already got your own set of tools, we've got you covered, because here is a nice little pattern carving set. It's manufactured by Record Power and it's compatible with all the references that we give as part of this educational course. This little set consists of 3 profiles. The first is, you'd almost think it's a flat tool. It's almost flat, but it's got a very slight curve to the blade. This is actually my favourite tool, Carving by Numbers reference number 6. The second tool, number 7, now this is about a 12mm gouge, and we'll come on to the reference for that gouge sweep shortly. Also then number 8, this is a flat tool. It's at 90 degrees to the blade of the tool. The cutting edge is at 90 degrees to the edge of the tool, but it's ground on both sides, so you can see it's a double grind on the blade. So if you don't already have your own tools, I'll put a link for the Carving by Numbers tools in the description below. So if you do have your own tools and you want to match your profiles exactly to mine so you can follow the Carving by Numbers series, you can, if you go to carvingbynumbers.com and then go to Projects section and then click on the 5000 tool series, there you're going to see a list of downloadable plans and projects. Now if you print off the front page of any one of those plans, you're going to see a set of tool profiles, a tool profile chart. If you print that off scale 1:1, then you'll be able to match your tools directly to those sweeps, and it should give you an accurate representation. So the really important part here is that the bevel angle, the angle of the bevel in relation to the cutting edge is, now that's around 20 degrees, if not a little keener. So it's a nice sharp angle. And also these cutting edge tips are square. We don't want to round those over because we're going to rely on those as we're doing our carving. Another essential part for your toolkit is to make sure they're razor sharp. It's not too difficult. There's actually a tutorial on how to get razor sharp carving tools. I'll put the link to that in the description below. But if you've got a little machine like this is a buffing machine. It's fitted with hard felt wheels, So this is a flat wheel, this is a shaped one. I just apply a little bit of honing compound. It's very important the wheel is travelling away from me, so it's travelling away because these are very sharp tools and that's soft material. It must go away from the tool. But if you use something like this, this helps you to maintain your tools. And just a couple of passes, one, and just remove the burr off the inside of the bevel. That's it. That's going to keep you with razor sharp tools, and they really are. It glides through the timber. So a little machine like that, fantastic. Now the next thing is timber. I've used a beautiful piece of, this is called basswood. It's so nice to carve. It's quite a decorative little timber. And so that's nice. If you can't get hold of basswood, English lime, pine, you can get most places. If you want to make your life seriously simple, if you're just starting out, and especially for children, then you could do pattern carving with MDF, because MDF has no grain in it. So that's one less thing to think about. If you're just focusing on getting your tools right, you know, getting the techniques right, and you don't want to worry about grain direction at this stage, well, you could kick off with MDF. Good choice. Okay, well, let's get the design onto the timber. Lots of different ways to do that. I'm just using a very simple method. This is carbon paper. You can get this from any stationery store. And when you lay that onto the timber and you design over the top, you can just draw down over, trace the line of your drawing, and it'll transfer that onto your timber. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that we've got the ink side of the carbon paper down. So when I actually draw on that, I'm just testing and I can see that it is leaving a mark on my timber. I've cut the drawing and the carbon paper to the same size, and I've just roughly indicated on the timber a few little pencil lines that lines everything up, make sure my design is nice and central. So next I'm just going to use some low tack masking tape to hold that in place while I mark it out. And now to transfer the drawing onto the timber, I could use a pencil, but I like to use, it's just a fine little ballpoint pen, just so that I can clearly see on my drawing where I've traced. Now it's incredibly important to keep your lines very precise. Try not to do too many scribbles or sketches. You want one line. Make it as clean as you possibly can, because the carving, you're going to carve to these lines, and the accuracy of the carving, the neatness of the carving, is going to relate directly to how clean you've got these lines. And of course, if you make a mistake, don't worry, you can always correct it later, but the essential thing is that you don't just start carving it with dodgy lines. You want to make sure your lines are right first. Okay, so let's peel this off and see what we've got. Has it worked? Yep. All right, look at that. Okay, so that's our neat little design that we're now going to start cutting in with our carving tools. So before I start, I am just going to tidy up some of these lines. Like I say, the most important part is to work to accurate lines. We want to get it as nice and parallel as we can, these lines. And try not to make too many lines which will get confusing, but here this was just a bit narrow and I'm just widening that a little bit, just there. Okay, next step. Okay, well you might have noticed the method that I'm using to hold this panel down. So all this is just a longer board, this is a piece of MDF. I've just screwed some battens either side of it. It just means that the work is held nice and firmly as I'm working, and then I can have both hands on the carving tool. Okay, well let's start setting in this design now. I'm going to use carving the CBN reference number 6. Almost flat, not quite. We'll make a start on this vine. The key with this, what we're going to actually do is create a V cut. I'm going to cut from the surface of the timber in that direction and meet it in a valley in the opposite direction. And we don't need to go to the line to start off with, so we won't cut to this line to start off with. We'll just work within in the middle. The wider the line, the deeper you go. The narrower the line, the shallower you go. And I'll show you what I mean. So I'm just using the tips of this cutting edge here. See how I'll just set in a cut there. Opposite hand. And just cut towards it. So you see how we're creating this nice little V. And meeting towards it. So I am using the edges of the tool, and you see how we get this nice little V created just starting. If you want to find out more about these techniques, pinch position, fist position, how to hold the tool properly, take a quick look at a tutorial called the Significant 6 Techniques, and that will show you how to hold and control the tool correctly. I'll put a link for that. I'll put a link for that in the description of this video too. So we're just creating this nice little V all the way along using the tip of that tool. And importantly, I'm cutting down the fibres. We're cutting the fibres down. Right, move to the flat number 8. So the nice thing with these 3 tools is that as I'm going around this curve here, I can use the shaped gouge. It's now in a fist position and it's anchored. But I can use that contour. I can use the shape, the actual curve of the gouge to give the exterior wall, the wall of the V, a little bit of shape too. So as I'm going around a corner, I can put a concave shape on the wall of that and a convex shape on that wall if I want to. If I want to add a little bit of extra interest, and of course with these three tools you're able to do that. So on the inside wall I would use the shaped, almost flat tool to put a slight radius on the wall of the inside of the curve, and this very slight contour, the very slight shape of the gouge to give me a slight concave shape on the wall going on the inside, if that makes sense. And so just by using those three tools, just to find which one you're comfortable with, you can soon just create nice clean lines for that vine. Now let's finish off this little tail at the end here. In lettering, these are called serifs. Now because it's coming really to the surface, it's going to be very shallow near the surface. So where it's at its thinnest point, it's very shallow, and as it goes deeper, further you go into the timber. So again, using the contour of carving tool number 7. Don't know whether you can see that, but just touching the surface where it's nice and narrow, and then going a little bit deeper as we go. Okay, now we've got our central vine put in, or a central branch. A couple of important points to just take note of. So here, can you see how this point we're meeting in 3 directions? So we've got a wall coming this way, a wall coming that way, and a wall going there. So what we've got created is almost like a little pyramid in that point there. So where you've got 3 sections coming together, we've got a wall that way, wall that way, wall that way. We've created a little pyramid section. So now here we've got this intersection going on. So what we will do is divide it. We'll keep this line high, and I'll just come back off the line a little bit, and we'll cut down in that direction. So with tool number 8, I'm just slicing down. So some of you might ask, why don't we use a vtool? You might be familiar with a vtool, and we do have one. It's our reference number 5. So a vtool is essentially two straight blades meeting in the bottom. We've designed ours a little bit differently because we have a U shape at the bottom of our vtool. It means that it's a little bit more versatile. So it's combined with a veiner. It also means it's a little bit easier to sharpen, but we'll come to that in a second. So you could actually use a vtool, but for timber, where you've got grain to think about, you're far better getting your techniques right and incising down. I'll illustrate why. So here is a little collection of straws. It's a little box of straws. Now if you can imagine, this is the grain of timber. The design, the way we've laid this design on the timber, so this is the direction of the grain. And if you think about timber, if you looked at timber under a microscope, it would probably look like a series of long drinking straws. So the challenge is that when you are carving timber, we always try and carve short fibres to long. And what I mean by that is long. I'll illustrate what I mean. Can you see here? The short fibre towards the V. So we're cutting short fibres towards long. It's supporting itself. If we take it and look at this as an example on the end, if we're pushing fibres across, you see how they all want to break out? Or if I'm simply pushing down, the longer fibres, they're supporting each other. If I'm pushing fibres across, you see how they all want to start moving? Whereas if I'm pushing down into the block, they're supported. If, on the other hand, you're carving something like MDF, where there's no grain to worry about, well, this vtool will be absolutely perfect in that case, because here we are literally just pushing that through the work. There's no grain to worry about, and that's why when we're getting your techniques right, when you're starting off and learning your techniques, sometimes MDF is a great choice because it's one less thing to think about. You're not thinking about the grain direction. Does that make sense? Right. Okay, I'm going to crack into one of these leaves now. So again, I'm just using the edge of the blade. I'm just using these 3 tool profiles. All right, how's that for a leaf? So we've got a little bit, you can see that. There, we've got a little bit of a shape to that valley line, which is quite nice. So in this section here, see how it's thinner? It's going narrower, so I'm not going so deep at this point, but as the leaf develops, it gets wider, then we go deeper. All right, now on to Dennis. Do his ears first. Just using the tips of the gouge. And notice that circle doesn't have to be the same shape as the gouge. I can adjust the shape by sliding the tool, just using those tips, and same in the opposite direction now. Not a lot of weight being put on here at all. So it's a very gentle, careful operation. Now his little eyes. Right, and now his nose. I don't think it's going to look very good having angles, so I am cheating away from the pattern carving set. I've gone to the number 2, which is a nice little gauge, and that's going to give me a rounded bottom to it. Now if you don't have that, you could shape a little stick and put some sandpaper on the end and just round it that way. But just having that little shaped gauge, you can see it's giving me a lovely little radius there just to finish that off nicely. So again, you could use a little piece, you could improvise and use a little piece of sandpaper. Right, okay, well that actually is pretty much as far as we need to go with our first step. Well, we'll say it's a first step. We call it roughing in. All the details are in there. We're going to refine it now. So to refine it, what I need to do is take off all of the ink and residue of that carbon paper to really see what detail we've got, what cut details we have, and then I can just refine it a little bit further. So I'm just going to get a sanding block. So here I've got a nice sanding block. This is a piece of 240 grit. The sanding block is going to keep things nice and flat. Yep. Oh, it doesn't quite wrap around, but that'll do. So what I'm going to do now is just give it a nice sanding across the surface, removing any traces of ink, carbon paper, dirt from your hands. We get it nice and clean, see what we're dealing with, and then we can tidy up all of the surface cuts, which is really what defines the design. Okay, here we go. Okay, well that's Dennis. That's Dennis so far. Let's just tidy up all of those surface cuts and really bring him to just make it clean and crisp. Actually, it's not bad. It's really not bad. Just looking for any awkward elbows. Here is a good example. It's not flowing nicely on the surface. So what we can do is just use our gauge just to get a much cleaner line. Do you see how that's cleaner on the surface now? So there's sort of three key lines, if you like. There is the surface 2, 1, 2 on the surface, and then it's the third line which is in the valley, that all need to be nice and clean and actually running complementary to each other. I was going to say parallel, but obviously they may taper together, but as long as they're tapering equally and that valley is complementing that line, then it'll look nice. So a handy little tool here to clean out any little bits of debris is an old toothbrush head. It also serves to burnish. Actually, it sort of polishes the inside of the cuts. So work your way methodically through the design now, starting in one area, just perfecting all of those lines, tidying it up with your little brush. Oh well, there we go. So here's our finished little project, Dennis. So I've just spent a little bit of time now going around all of the lines, removing any awkward elbows or lines on the surface of the timber, because those are the important lines. That's the bit that catches your eye. So the next important step is the finish or the polish that we put on the project, and there's several methods that we can use, and I'll be covering that in a video coming soon.